Hello, and thank you for joining us today in our study of the book of Psalms. Today we are in Psalm 9, and it's actually the lengthiest of the Psalms that we will have considered to this point in our study. And this is a psalm that is geared far more towards praising God for who He is and what He has done than it is focused on a particular need or a particular struggle. There are things that are going to be mentioned in here that are going to deal with God's dealing with the wicked and things of that nature. But it doesn't seem to be so much focused on a singular event or a single situation that David is facing, as it is simply praising and honoring God for all that he does in his interactions. And so we're going to go through today and we're going to read and do lessons from these, but our lessons will be a little bit shorter because the length of the chapter is a little bit longer. And so let's go through and read Psalm 9 this morning. Beginning in verse 1, we find these words: I will praise you, O Lord, with my whole heart. I will tell of all your marvelous works. I will be glad and rejoice in you. I will sing praise to your name, O Most High. When my enemies turn back, they shall fall and perish at your presence. For you have maintained my right and my cause. You sat on the throne judging in righteousness. You have rebuked the nations. You have destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. O enemy, destructions are finished forever. And you have destroyed cities, even their memory has perished. But the Lord shall endure forever. He has prepared his throne for judgment. He shall judge the world in righteousness, and he shall administer judgment for the peoples in uprightness. The Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. And those who know your name will put their trust in you. For you, Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you. Sing praises to the Lord who dwells in Zion. Declare his deeds among the people. When he avenges blood, he remembers them. He does not forget the cry of the humble. Have mercy on me, O Lord. Consider my trouble from those who hate me. You who lift me up from the gates of death, that I may tell of all your praise in the gates of the daughter of Zion. I will rejoice in your salvation. The nations have sunk down in the pit which they made. In the net which they hid, their own foot is caught. The Lord is known by the judgment he executes. The wicked is snared in the work of his own hands. The wicked shall be turned into hell, and all the nations that forget God. For the needy shall not always be forgotten. The expectation of the poor shall not perish forever. Arise, O Lord, do not let man prevail. Let the nations be judged in your sight. Put them in fear, O Lord, that the nations may know themselves to be but men. Here in Psalm 9, you have this message of praise and honor and glory for God. And there's not so much a request of God to take care of a particular thing, as we've talked about already, but rather it's more generic in its theme. So let's look at a couple of lessons today from this particular chapter, or a couple of things that I saw when I read through the chapter. First, the emphasis of what David is writing about throughout most of the chapter is God's ability to judge the nations and God's ability to do it righteously. In verse 4, David writes that you have maintained my right and my cause. You sat on the throne judging in righteousness. You have rebuked the nations. You have destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. God is not just the God of Israel at this particular time. Even though he is dealing directly with Israel, with the promises that were made and with putting things forth about the promises of the Messiah and various other things, God is not only concerned with Israel. He is the judge of all the nations, and as such, as you see throughout the Old Testament, if you're taking the time to look at it, you have a situation where God is dealing with all the nations. Within the framework of the Old Testament, you're just getting one snippet of God's interaction with man. You're getting the specific accounts of the promises and of the interactions with Israel that lead to the coming of the Messiah, that promise and look forward to the coming of the Christ. But that doesn't mean that every interaction of God, every prophet of God, and everything that God said and did is found within the confines of the Scriptures. It's not. It's just the scope of what God is doing to relate the story that He wants to give in showing us what was done for us. And so God has the ability to rebuke the nations, to judge the nations. At the end of the psalm, the psalmist writes, "Put them in fear, O Lord, that the nations may know themselves to be but men." And yet God is not but man. He is the Lord over man. He is the one who judges the nations. The other thing I want us to notice from this chapter is the fact that David points to the Lord as being a refuge, a place of safety, a place to which the righteous can go. In verse 8, he says, "He shall judge the world in righteousness, and he shall administer judgment for the peoples in uprightness. The Lord also will be a refuge for the oppressed, a refuge in times of trouble. And those who know your name will put their trust in you. For you, Lord, have not forsaken those who seek you." Here you have David talking about those who seek out God in times of trouble, those who are oppressed, and are ones who are willing to put their focus and put their the turn of their lives to God. He says God is a refuge. He is a place of safety. He is a place to which those who are hurting and those who are being troubled can turn for help. But in order for that to be successful, you can't use God. You have to turn to God. You have to be the one who's willing to go wholeheartedly toward God in order to fully have the refuge of God. And so you have this situation he talks about in verse 10, that those who know your name will put their trust in you. There is a trust that we have to be willing to place in God, that He will take care of us, that He does know what is best for us, and that if we will do His will, He will take care of us. These are some of the things that I found in Psalm 9. I hope that they are beneficial to you. I know that we didn't get into a lot of detail in our analysis of the psalm and application of the psalm today, and there's a lot more that we could say. But hopefully these have been some things that have helped to point you in the direction of how the psalm is taking things. Next time, we will come back and we will begin looking at Psalm 10. I hope that you'll join us then. But until then, have a great day.